Well, hello and welcome to the Mindset Mentor. I'm Tania Kolar, helping you cultivate a life you love. Yes, it is possible, my friends, and it is my mission to help you get there. So, on today's show, I want to focus on, how to be happier in your career. I know it's really difficult to live a life that you love when you absolutely do not love your job, or you don't love the environment, or you find yourself stuck in a toxic work culture, and you just don't know what to do about it. Well, I've brought on my expert today, who is an author. She's written a book called Career Self-Care, and she's got some amazing tools and techniques and strategies to help you really start to find the happiness and success that you desire when it comes to your career. And by the way, that could be, self-employed as well. If you have a business and you find that you're struggling, there's so many great tools here. So I just want to jump right into the conversation because there's a lot to talk about, and I want you to get as much benefit as possible. So how about we say hello to Minda Zetlin, who again is the author of Career Self-Care. She is also a writer for Laid Back Leader. It was a column that she had, by the way, widely successful. And she was also the former president of the American Society of Journalists and Authors. She's interviewed experts, and she has amassed this handbook essentially of incredible ways for you to really start to harness that happiness, success that leads to fulfillment in life. Isn't that our goal? We all want to be fulfilled and feel amazing and happy. And nobody wakes up and says, hey, I want to go to a job that I hate. But the reality is that sometimes we are in those positions. So how do you deal with it? Well, let's ask Minda. Minda Zetlin, it's an absolute pleasure having you on the Mindset Mentor today. Thanks for joining us. We need your help.
Oh, well, thank you for inviting me. So, do you want to jump right in on what to do if you have a job you hate?
Hey, great place to start, because you know what? It's actually kind of tragic to think of how many people are in that position, and it doesn't feel good. Listen, I've been there as well many years ago. Fortunately, I'm doing what I love, but I've been there where it was like, wow, I mean, this job doesn't feel good at all. It's stifling, it's draining. If you have responsibilities, it just sort of compounds. So, yeah, how do we deal with that, Minda?
It's easy to be very flip and say, well, if you have a job you hate, go get another job. And
Hmm.
I will say that right now, even with the layoffs that are happening, even with the stuff that's going on in the economy, there's more employment out there than there has been any time in my lifetime. Up until now, unemployment is historically low, at least in the United States.
Hmm.
So the opportunities to go find a different job are probably there, more than they have been at other times. But it is true that not everyone can up and leave a job that they don't like. You may be stuck because of family obligations, because of needing to be in a particular geography.
Hmm.
Uh, there, there are plenty of reasons why people do get stuck. So, I mean, my first suggestion, which is really more like a mindset, to use your word,
Hmm.
than a specific suggestion, is don't stay stuck. Don't just assume that you're in a job you hate and there's nothing you can do about it. Try to do something. At least look for ways to make yourself happier. And by the way, that doesn't necessarily mean quit your job and go find another job. There may be lots of ways to make a job less miserable without actually having to go job hunt to another employer.
Yeah, that's really great. I'm glad that you said that because, we're not telling people right away, hey, quit your job and that's it, right? So you can learn to love the job that you're in as well. I remember Wayne Dyer had a quote, and he said that he goes, if you're not doing what you love what you do. Right. So sort of bring in that love into that space. There's always ways that we can tweak our reality. Every moment is a choice. So I know that you have some great tips on how to get there. But it's really interesting that you focused, your book on self-care when it comes to the work environment. I mean, there's so many great books or information out there, about strategies and techniques and how to work harder, how to be better, how to do more. But when it it comes to self-care, I don't think people have equated having self-care to their work environment. I mean, I think it's hard initially for people even to find self-care in their personal lives. So interesting. So tell us a little bit about, why you've chosen to focus on self-care and the importance of that in the work environment.
And by the way, to your career, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's take half a step back for a second and just talk about what self-care actually is, because sometimes people think it's about bubble baths and massages and spa days,
Mm-hmm.
and I think all those things are great forms of self-care. I enjoy all those things myself, but self-care is whatever. Here's a phrase that I use, and I think it's important for all of us for both our lives and our careers.
Mm-hmm.
Self-care is whatever causes you to be happy, healthy, and at ease. And if you're happy, healthy, and at ease, you can do your job better. So that could be taking a bubble bath. It could be taking a walk, especially in nature. There's piles and piles of research showing that being around nature, just even in a park,
Mm-hmm.
is hugely beneficial for our bodies and our brains and our mental and emotional state. It could be going out for drinks with friends. Now I wouldn't suggest to anyone that they overindulge in alcohol, but
Mm-hmm.
socializing is an important part of self-care. So self-care is all the things that make you feel more you and more alive. And, a bubble bath is just one little piece of that puzzle. So let's talk about the importance of self-care at work. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually giving a whole keynote about this at the Elevate conference in Toronto next week. So I've been really,
Awesome.
thank you. So I've been really thinking and working about how to make that connection between self-care and career success clear.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there are so many reasons why taking care of yourself will make you more effective and better at work. A rested brain makes better decisions. The brain of a person who takes frequent breaks, there's brain science that explains this, and I'll get into it if you want me to, but
I love
the
it. Yeah.
brain of a person who takes frequent breaks is more creative, learns faster, and is therefore going to be a more successful person. That's just two reasons why taking care of
Mm-hmm.
yourself, making sure that you are happy, healthy, and at ease, will actually make you more successful in your career. And I was just thinking today, as I'm putting some final tweaks to my keynote, that actually, if you think about the most successful people that you know, not maybe the people who are just like one step ahead of you in their careers, but the
Mm-hmm.
people who've really reached the top. All right, leaving aside Elon Musk because he's kind of a law unto himself. Most of those people who are incredibly successful also have really good boundaries about work, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Tim Cook, I think, goes to bed early because he gets up early because he needs time to himself. Steve Jobs, there was never anybody more committed to their work than Steve Jobs. He was working on the last full day of his life. And there probably was never anyone who loved their job as much or built something so huge and world changing. Steve Jobs was home for dinner at 5:15 every night. The most
Nice.
successful people have figured out that they need to take care of themselves and to be in their best selves in order to do their best work. And that applies to everybody.
Yeah, the brain functions, so much better when we are well rested, when we feel we've had adequate sleep. Otherwise, I mean, you get into that brain fog. You can't, you can't make decisions clearly, or you make the wrong decisions when you just don't feel, optimal. And so I think that is really important, and setting boundaries, I think, can be really difficult for some people. Also, even I think it's important to recognize that you got to set some boundaries for yourself, because we can get stuck in a space where we just focus on work so much that we lose perspective of everyone and everything around us, and isolate in a sense. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
know I've been guilty of it, where I
Mm-hmm.
just
Me
get
too.
so right. Yeah, Minda, you too, where you get so focused, and then you realize, oh wow, I haven't talked to people for days. I haven't
Mm-hmm.
reached out to people, and that's not a great place, because I think that we've recognized, certainly through the pandemic, how important it is to have human connection and contact, and we cannot replicate that experience of human energy and interaction virtually,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And however important you might think it is, it's even more important than that. Having regular human interaction and community, particularly community,
Mm-hmm.
is proven too make your brain function better longer, will hold off the onset of Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia, and actually is correlated with longevity. I don't know if you know the work about the blue zones, where Dan Buttner went around the world and examined the places where people routinely live past 100, and he
Mm.
found all kinds of, he found all the things that your mother and your doctor told you to do. These people get regular exercise, they eat mostly vegetables, yada yada. But they also live in tight-knit communities, and that is
Mm.
so important. And if you think about it, it's evolutionary, right? Humans grew up in tribes. A human in a tribe is more useful to the species in general than a human off by itself. So it totally makes sense that that would be correlated with longevity if you think about it.
Yeah, it does make sense, and also I think we learn, from each other. So, and things evolve just, in a different way. We can create more, I think, collectively as we can, just singularly, right? So I think it's really important to foster great community, and to ensure that you have the right people around you. I think that certainly in a work environment, we can experience a toxic culture. And so that's something that people may be battling right now. And I think also having, maybe come back to work from being away and now coming into an office, and people are not very happy to come back in some
Mm-hmm. A
cases.
lot of people aren't. Yeah.
Yeah, it can create more stress. So how do people deal with that kind of a situation?
Okay. Well, in relation to the toxic environment and the people you're working with, and to go back to our first conversation about
Mm,
what to do if you hate your job.
mm,
So, uh, very frequently, research shows that when people hate their job, it's really that they hate their boss or they hate somebody that they're working with.
yeah.
That is a very high reason that people actually make the decision to quit. I think that actually happened to me. I had a job in trade publishing many years ago, and
Mm-hmm.
I knew that I wanted to leave and be an independent writer. That was kind of always in my plans,
Mm-hmm.
but it was getting into a toxic work environment and working with someone who really didn't recognize the importance of any boundaries that
Mm.
got me to the point of saying, okay, I'm going to pull the trigger and do this, which I'm really happy I did. So she kind of did me a favor. But so if you're miserable in your job, the first thing is to figure out why. And if the reason, as for many people, is that you're working with people who don't make you feel fulfilled, respected, valued, um, and who don't align with who you want to be, then maybe there's ways to change that within your organization, right? I mean, yes, certainly look for another job. I would
Mm-hmm.
totally encourage anyone to do that in this economy. But um, maybe there's a lateral move you could make. Maybe you could go work on a project with someone else and spend less time with your boss. Maybe, and this is some advice I give in the book that people are probably going to hate me for, but another way to deal, probably the simplest, easiest way to deal with a toxic person in your workplace is just put distance between yourself and them, however you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
But a more difficult, but sometimes more effective way is to do the opposite and get to know them and figure out what it is that's causing the behavior that's making you crazy. Because usually people aren't toxic for no reason. Usually there's something behind that. It may be something in their past,
Mm-hmm.
but or it may be something in the current situation that you don't know about. But the more you get to know someone, the more you kind of understand what's driving them. A few good things will happen. First, you'll figure out how not to push their buttons, or how to push the right buttons that make them do what you want instead of the buttons that make them do what you don't want.
Mm-hmm.
You'll get to know them, so you'll get to understand them a little bit better. Often for me, that already makes a person seem less toxic just because I kind of understand them as a human being a bit better. Um, as you get to know them, and if they're really a difficult person, there's probably not a long line of people at their office door trying to get to know them. So if you make that effort to try and befriend somebody who's really a difficult person, they're likely to appreciate that, and they're likely to start trusting you, both of which could make their interactions with you a lot more pleasant. So that's
Yeah.
another strategy that you can try if you want to take on a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah, I like that. It's really worth the challenge to get those results. And everybody has a bad day, right? And as you say, you really don't know what's driving them, and everybody has triggers, and maybe you just happen to be a trigger for that person for whatever reason. You remind them of somebody. It could be as simple as that, and it
Hmm.
really has nothing to do with you, or they're just generally like that. So I think, yeah, trying to get to know them, great advice. As they say, kill them with kindness when people are, not that nice sometimes, right? And it goes a long way because it's not something that people will be expecting, right? If they're used to having people respond in, a particular pattern, right? Life is very much about patterns that we all have. So it's interesting to try to figure out what someone's pattern is so that you can, better understand them. It's kind of like, the love languages, right? I think we all have, languages in business as well and how we interact with people. So it's really interesting to be able to, figure that out. And so it certainly can be fixable. It's not to say that, hey, if somebody's in that environment that you have to leave. I love that you've offered some options of, working with what you have, because it can be very challenging and stressful for people to even consider looking for another job,
Right.
especially if they've been there for a really long time. And I think that happens too when you see, let's say, new management come in. You may have loved your job and then your career, whatever, and then all of a sudden new management comes in and you absolutely don't like it anymore. And we've seen that. I've seen that certainly in a shift in being at a company for years where it's the different management came in, different style, different people, different personalities to contend with. So it's very important, as you say, to really try to understand, why someone is operating the way they're operating, right? And you have to make a choice. I think it's important to make a choice. So do you have any suggestions on how to distinguish whether, it's fixable, should you stay, should you work at it, or how to know just to sort of say, listen, now I've had enough and I really need to make that shift and find something else.
Well, that's that's the kind of thing that you have to figure out yourself, and it takes time.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you said kill them with kindness before. I think
Mm-hmm.
what I would say is kill them with curiosity. Um,
Mm.
I think curiosity is an incredibly useful emotion to bring to every difficult situation. And so start by satisfying your curiosity. Is there do some research, talk to people and satisfy your curiosity about staying and about leaving. Find out what the opportunities might be for you that could possibly fit you at a different company. If you're part of an industry group, go connect with people at the industry group. That'll also serve the purpose of having more community and social interaction, by the way, which is also good for you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and try and just ask, what might be some opportunities. I'm not sure I'm happy in my job. I'm just exploring. What advice would you give me? If you ask people for advice, they'll almost always help you. If you ask people to help you, they may or may not want to help you, or they may feel imposed on. But if you ask people for their opinion, if you ask people for their advice,
Mm.
if you ask people to share their wisdom, then they're motivated to help you, and often they'll get from there and go, oh yeah, and by the way, I could introduce you to this person who's hiring. So that's to me a more effective approach to trying to get that. You can also ask those same questions depending on the size and nature of your organization. Within your organization, uh, have lunch with somebody in another division who looks like their job, whose job looks more fun to you than yours.
Mm.
Ask them about it. Again, just kind of looking around and looking for some options and wondering if you would share your knowledge with me. Sometimes people, I'm not saying everyone will say yes to this, but more often than not, they do. Um, Again, use your curiosity on whatever it is about your current situation that you don't like. Could you, in your current job, take on other projects that would make it more exciting? Could you, start? Could you start getting to know your boss and see if that would help, if that's part of the problem? Just apply curiosity to every aspect of both your job and the possibility of moving. And then think about it and think about making a decision. Um, and there's, I hesitate to even mention this, but there is research that suggests that if you're really thinking hard about whether to make a big change or not make a big change, people tend to be happier when they've gone ahead and made that big change. But that's a
Mm.
very kind of macro view. Your life is your life, and it might be different for you. So be curious and find out.
I love that. Be curious and, ask questions. And, see if people are willing to share their knowledge. Well, we're going to take a break here on the Mindset Mentor. And so happy that Minda Zetlin is sharing her knowledge, helping us to learn how to foster more happiness, more success, and fulfillment in our career. She is the author of Career Self Care. And we'll hear more from Minda when we come back. And welcome back to the Mindset Mentor. I'm Tania Kolar. So excited about today's show to have a conversation about how to foster more happiness and success and fulfillment in your career. Because I think it's such a tragedy when, you're stuck in an environment and, you're doing this day in and day out and you really don't like it. It doesn't feel authentic. It doesn't feel good. And we can do this for many years because we don't want to make a change. And it's important that we start to recognize, what can we do in that situation so that we can really cultivate a life that we love. Now, I'm not saying that, everyone is going to have a career that is perfect. There may be people or things that you don't love about that job, but, there's ways to make yourself really enjoy that job on a daily basis, instead of feeling miserable. If you woke up this morning and you thought, oh my gosh, I got to drag myself out of bed, go to work, I hate that, process, then imagine, what that feels like, in compounds and what it does to the body. Stress gets trapped and stored in the body, which leads to dis-ease. So, we want to find as much ease as possible in life. That's how you live a life that you love, is by finding that joy and that ease, in the simple things. And we spend a lot of time in our, career. So it's important to really do what we can to ensure that, we're taking care of our mind and body. So we have our expert today, Minda Zetlin, who is joining us. She is the author. Actually, she's a multiple author. Her latest book that we're focusing on today is called Career Self Care. So Minda, it's such a pleasure, having you on the Mindset Mentor today and helping us to navigate the career world and, helping us to start to love our environment or to recognize when, hey, maybe that environment needs a shake up and a wake up. And I think, it's interesting because we can sometimes, I would say, outgrow a job. And then we might hang on for dear life because we're so afraid to make a change. So what are your thoughts about pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone and how important that is?
Well, it's very important. And you've probably seen the research or the experts who say that the more you stay within your comfort zone, the smaller it'll get. The less you'll be able to do anything that challenges you or makes you feel uncomfortable. The more you step outside your comfort zone, the bigger it'll get, right? So it's always a great idea. You can't see it on camera, but actually right over there, I have a sign in my office that says, "Did you do something scary today?" And I
Mm-hmm.
can't say that I do something scary every day, but I
Mm-hmm.
try really hard to go towards the things that do scare me a little bit, that do represent a bit of a stretch. Um, which, by the way, aside from the fact that all this stuff is good for your career, it's also good for you. I was just reading some research about the incredible importance, especially as we go through life. We do this a lot when we're kids, but throughout our lives, of learning new things and really completely new things that we don't
Mm-hmm.
know how to do, like pick up a musical instrument you've never played, like try to learn a language that you've never spoken. Two things that I'm trying to do. And it's the benefits to your brain are amazing and lifelong. So yes, always do look to expand your horizons. It's going to be better not only for your career but for you.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're learning new things, you're, building those new neural networks, right? As they
Right.
say, in science, thoughts that fire together, wire together. And so when you're learning something, you are stretching, you're learning, you actually are creating, that cluster of networks and strengthening that. And then you get better and better as you continue. We can get locked and fixed in our beliefs and our mindset and think, well, I don't know how to do it, so I'm not even going to try. But it is so important to put yourself yourself out there. The magic and the beauty happens when you take those risks and you challenge yourself. And that could be, something really simple, like, making that phone call that you've been, postponing. It doesn't have to be sort of a monumental shift. And so that's one of the things that I thought was so great about your book, because you have so many exercises and tools and strategies and techniques, but you've made it so simple, and you talked about baby steps. So tell us more about that.
Oh, baby steps are so powerful. And I'm so glad you went there, because if you hadn't, I would have said the way to get outside your comfort zone and the way to challenge yourself is to do it in the tiniest increments possible. And I know that being in a job that's, especially if you've been there for a long time, is a comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend now who, by every logical imagining, should have left his job a long time ago, but he's one of these people who's a little bit socially awkward. He's absolutely comfortable where he is, and much to
Mm-hmm.
the frustration of his wife, he's just not gonna. And and I understand that. So the thing is, don't torture yourself, don't terrify yourself. um, Often the smallest steps is the best way to get to a distant destination. It's strange, but it's true. Here's an example from my life. So, for years, for whatever reasons of superstition, I'm not really a superstitious person, but I knew that I needed to have a will. For
Mm-hmm.
decades, I knew that I needed to have a will, and I didn't have a will. And it was on. So I made these to-do lists. Yeah, I mean, I did everything. I talked to a friend of ours who was a lawyer and said, would you make a will for us? And he said, absolutely. Just email me the information. Did I do it? No. Here's how I finally got past that. I set myself the task to open the LegalZoom website. I'm not. This isn't a plug for LegalZoom. It could be any website, but
Mm-hmm.
in my case, my will is very simple. It's everything to my husband. If he dies first, then everything to his kids, because we don't have kids of our own. Simple. So, and I'm not anticipating anybody fighting anything. So, a website will was perfectly sufficient for me. So that was what I did. I set myself the task to open the website. That's it. If I open the website, yay, pat myself on the back. That's it, success. Um, that is the way to get past something that frightens you. So, okay, I opened the website for a few days there. I just opened the website. And the website, whoever wrote the website also understands that this is a scary topic for people. So they start with a really simple question. Okay, I could answer that question. And then that's another simple question. Okay, I could answer that question, and that's it for today.
Mm-hmm.
And then, a couple of days later, I come back and answer another question. Well, there it is. It's done. It's finished. It's completed. It's notarized. My stepdaughter has a copy in case something happens where people can't find ours because we live far away from our kids. It's done. And the only way I could get there, I scolded myself. I talked to people. I put it on my to-do list. The only way I could finally get there was to take it down to the smallest, simplest baby step. Just start with that, and then declare success. Yay, I'm proud of myself. I took that teeny tiny step outside my comfort zone, and that's all I need to do today.
Well done. I love that. That's so good. That's great advice, because, we overwhelm ourselves and then we don't do anything. We procrastinate. And the
Mm-hmm.
procrastination can last a really long time. But the actual task, I mean, can be done, whatever task it is that you're working on, can be done sometimes quite quickly. Maybe it takes, days or what have you, sometimes even weeks. But it's so much faster than the procrastination that we're stuck in, that lingers, hangs on until we get that task done. And another thing that I think is important that you said was to pat yourself on the back, because when you acknowledge those little steps that you take, you're activating the dopamine, which is the reward center of the brain, right? So, and then guess what? When you start to activate that, it's helpful when you have that going, that dopamine, it's easier to do the next steps and the next tasks when you have that momentum.
The reward center of your brain thinks, oh, that last time worked out well. Okay, maybe I'll try it again. Procrastination is one of my favorite topics, because I know what it says in the dictionary, but in my dictionary, procrastination is a multi-syllable word for fear. Most of the time when we procrastinate, right, as with the will, it's
Mm-hmm.
really fear. So if you and it's very counterproductive how we usually respond to that. We usually respond to that by saying, oh, what's wrong with me? I swore I was going to get this done. Why didn't I get it done? Um, so now we've added anger to fear, and we're
Oh.
just we're just in a worse place than where we were before. So
Yeah.
the thing I try to do with myself, and the thing I suggest to everyone, is if you find yourself procrastinating about something, instead of yelling at yourself, because as my great friend Shelmi Nabji says, you cannot belittle yourself to greatness. Instead of yelling at yourself,
Ooh.
um, ask yourself a simple question: what is frightening me about this? And then find the answer, and then find ways to make whatever's scary less scary. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Procrastination, here's my personal proof, in case I ever wondered it for myself, that procrastination has nothing to do with laziness. Don't ever call yourself lazy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, I spent a couple of years ago, I spent hours and hours out in my yard digging up and pulling up blackberry bushes, which, if you live in the Pacific Northwest, or I guess along the West Coast, anything about these blackberry bushes. They're an invasive species. They're awful. They have thorns on them that can literally scar you for life. That happened to a friend of
Oh.
mine. And they grow everywhere all the time. They're obnoxious. And so here I am tearing out these awful things for hours. Why? Because I had to make a simple phone call to schedule a routine mammogram, and I didn't want to. Now, was that laziness? Or was that fear? You tell me.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Boy, if you put that effort into, those thorny, prickly bushes,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, I mean, it's much easier to schedule that
yeah,
appointment. So interesting. And thank you for sharing that because I think we all have those fears. And, when you start to break it down, or even write it on a piece of paper, I find that that's helpful. If you write out the fear on a piece of paper, it somehow, is not as big anymore. It seems much more manageable. And actually on that note, I'd love to talk about power journaling and how that's helped you personally, and if you can give us some examples.
absolutely. But I wanted to also mention something that I learned about more recently. It's
Mm-hmm.
not in the book because I learned about it after I wrote the book, but I totally love it for situations involving fear.
Yep.
Um, Something called fear storming, not brainstorming, fear storming, but it's the same basic idea. So if a situation is frightening you, like I'm a little bit nervous about this keynote next week. So
Mm-hmm.
if the situation is frightening you, get your journal. We're going to talk about journaling in a second, or a piece of paper if you don't have one, and write down all the bad things that you think could happen
Mm-hmm.
as a
Mm-hmm.
result of whatever it is that you're frightened of. I faint on stage. The audience starts throwing things at me. Whatever. Just
Yeah.
write them all down. And
Mm-hmm.
then go back and look at, just like it was a brainstorming session with a whiteboard and a bunch of your colleagues, right? Just write them all down. And then go back and look at each one of them and ask yourself, okay, how is this really something that reasonably could happen? What could I do to respond to it if it does happen? How could I handle it? Take your fears and take like a close look at each one of those situations and think about them, and you can sometimes blunt them that way,
Yeah.
instead of just having this, unformed kind of anxiety thing going on in your head.
So true. I think also too, when sometimes when you look at, the fear, you'll realize that you're looking at it from, a childhood experience. So your 6-year-old or 10-year-old self is reacting to this moment now on fear that you experienced at that younger age. So, and then when you start to see that, you go, oh, okay, well, I don't need to have that. I can now let that go. I can release it and let it go.
Right, often true. I mean, we all have, all of us, including me, have things from our childhoods that trigger stuff, and being aware of that can be really helpful. So to talk about journaling a bit, so I don't know how many of the listeners, watchers do journal now. I have been doing it my whole life, and most of my life, my journal was just kind of an emotional sort of dumping spot. It's where I vented about whatever was bothering me on any given day, and
Mm-hmm.
and then I let it go, and I didn't really do much more with it than that. And then I saw the bullet journal video, which takes 3 minutes, and is probably worth a watch for everyone. And the bullet journal is actually something really completely different. It's not at all about venting your emotions, or writing down your thoughts and dreams. It's about um, it's a paper and pencil way of doing something that I think a lot of us do on electronic devices, but it's a way of scheduling, making task lists, making goals. But what happened to me is that those two things kind of combined in my brain. And what I realized is that, this little piece of paper book that costs, $7.99 at the hardware store or whatever, can actually really become a powerful tool for both motivating you, giving you a record of where you were in your career and your life at given moments, and helping you stay on track with your bigger goals. There's all kinds of reasons, we can talk about it, but there's all kinds of reasons why big, distant goals tend to get shoved aside by, the day-to-day stuff you have to do, the urgent versus the important, as Stephen Covey and others have pointed out. So a journal can really help you keep track of those things. So in my journal, there's there's all kinds of stuff. There's still my thoughts and hopes and dreams and venting of my emotions. And, I'm mad at my husband today because he did X, there's still all that stuff. There's also, my plans for the week or whatever. There's also the tasks that I want to accomplish this week, the tasks that I want to accomplish this month, and what I call future tasks, things that I want to do, sometime in the future. And usually I try to attach a time goal for those things. Often those goals get pushed, but having that and writing it down allows me to go back and take a second look at where I was a month ago, where I am now, what have I dropped the ball on. So it's going to be some things you drop the ball on. That's just life, right? If you're not failing to meet some of your goals, it's because you don't have enough goals or they're not big enough.
Yeah.
So, what have I not done? What isn't really relevant anymore? What probably needs to be triaged out because there's other stuff going on? What do I need to really pay attention to? And by having that weekly and monthly check-in, it keeps me honest to the bigger things that I want to try and accomplish. So that's to me, that's kind of the power of power journaling.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it also takes some of that the mind clutter out of your head when you have all of these tasks sort of swimming around. It's like, okay, so now you've prioritized them, you know where you want to start. It's there and you can actually focus your mind, much more intensely on whatever it is that you're going to actually focus on in that moment. And I think that's really, really key and important. Now, when you use your journal and your journaling, do you also incorporate gratitude into your journal, or is that a practice that you do at all?
Well, it's a practice I do differently,
Mm-hmm.
actually. So this is a habit I picked up I mean, a lot of people do gratitude journaling, and
Yeah.
I totally encourage that. I think it's great. So what works for me, just me, is this was suggested to me at a meditation workshop I went to with the Levy's, Joel and Michelle Levy, years ago. To When you first wake up in the morning, before you pick up your electronic device, before you step out of bed, before anything else, they have a super simple exercise, which has kind of stuck with me for years. Start by being awake to the fact that you're awake. So to me, that's the most challenging part of this. And I haven't really figured out how to be awake to the fact that I'm awake. But my stand-in for this is usually that I pet a cat, because there's almost always a cat in bed with me.
Nice, nice.
And it's tactile, and it's okay, I'm awake now. I know, where I am in the world. Next, find 3 things to be grateful for. And they say, be grateful that you're still breathing. Be
Mhm.
grateful that, the sun is still up outside. I'm in the Northwest, so today I'm grateful that the smoke has dissipated because we had a big smoke event over the last 3 days.
Oh dear.
Um, Simple things, complicated things, big things. I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I have this opportunity to go speak at this festival. I'm grateful for the people in my life that I love. Whatever, 3 things every morning. Set an intention for the day. That's the last step of the exercise, and get up. So that's my particular gratitude exercise.
Yeah.
But gratitude journal is also great. One thing I do that's a little bit similar, it's not quite a gratitude journal, but I think
Mhm.
it has some of the same benefits that I also really recommend, is at the end of the day, right before I go to sleep, I try to write down the positives that I accomplished that day. So it's like I start with today, I That's the first two words. And then I say the things that I did. And you got to be careful because it can't be, um, I wrote half a column, but I didn't finish it like I intended to. It's like, no, I wrote half a column. That's it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I made 4 phone calls, even though I meant to make 8. No, I made some phone calls. I made some progress. So write down what you did that day that moved you towards your goals or that otherwise served your happiness and your greater purposes. Um, and then one thing that is going to be your top priority that I add, one thing that's my top priority for tomorrow.
Yeah.
And there might be more than one important thing going on tomorrow. Um, you can't, that doesn't mean you're going to forget about the others. Just pick the one that seems most like it's moving you forward to be
Mm.
the priority for the day. And so that's my nighttime practice with the
Yeah,
journal.
I love that because for me, incorporating gratitude has been a game changer in my life, and I also have my gratitude ritual and practice on a daily basis, and I think it's so helpful. And I love that you sort of ended it off with adding the things that you did that day that were good, right? That moved you forward, and focusing on that. None of the negative mind chatter because we can be our own worst critics, and
Mm-hmm.
especially when you're doing that in the evening, right? And you're drifting off to sleep, things are going to be circulating in the mind. So you want to focus on those positives so that you wake up feeling that energy of positivity versus, beating yourself up and feeling down like you didn't accomplish things. Listen, we are humans, right? So we are going to have moments where we just don't get it all done. And it's okay. And it doesn't mean that you're not good enough, that you didn't try hard enough. Sometimes you need to decompress and you need to take a break. So when you don't accomplish all of those goals and those tasks, hey, it's okay. Give yourself a break. And speaking of break, we're going to take another short break
Okay.
here. All right. So we'll be right back here with more of Minda Zetlin. She is the author of Career Self Care. So important to incorporate self care in the career environment. And that may be relatively a new concept for many of you. So stay tuned. We're going to learn more of how to have more self care. And we're also going to talk about goal setting. And we'll be back here on Sauga 960. Hello and welcome back to the Mindset Mentor. I'm Tania Kolar. We are, having a great conversation about how to find more happiness, fulfillment, and success in your career. Minda Zetlin is my special guest today. She is the author of Career Self-Help. She's actually a multiple author. She's an incredible writer. She has a column called Laid Back Leader, super successful. She's interviewed many experts, including Richard Branson, who's one of my favorite humans. I just admire him greatly. Never met him, by the way. One day I would love to because I think, he's such an incredible inspiration and somebody who is truly giving back to humanity through the work that he does, socially conscious. Certainly, I think living an authentic life, that's something I believe that we should all strive to, is to feel authentic in our environments, whether that's in your career, in your personal life. It's really lovely to be able to just be who you are, to have a voice, and to bring your best self, right? And enjoy that experience. So we're going to continue the conversation, Minda, and I want to talk about before we get into goals, because I know just before we took a break, I had mentioned that we're going to get into goal setting. But before we actually, take that path, I know that you want to talk about happiness and particularly the beauty and happiness. So what does that mean? What does that mean?
The I think I mumbled. So what I said was the duty of happiness.
Oh, the
I
duty.
got I got this from my ASJA colleague Gretchen Rubin,
Mm-hmm.
who has probably researched happiness more than anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And what I thought was really interesting was she alerted me to something Robert Louis Stevenson said, which is there is no duty with a D, no duty so underrated as the duty to be happy. And
Mm.
I think that most of us don't really think about that. And I would really encourage everyone, to think that among all the responsibilities that you have in life, to be a good employee, a good business owner, if you're a business owner, a good employer, if you're a boss, a good spouse, parent, daughter or son, sibling or whatever, is also your own duty to yourself to be happy. And I say that for some really specific reasons. And the reasons are happier people generally speaking, are better people. Now, that doesn't mean, go be happy at the expense of someone else, right? I mean,
Hmm.
if committing embezzlement, you think will make you happy by getting you a ton of money and getting, and so you can buy the car that you want or something. First of all, my guess is that won't actually make you happy. There's a lot of there's a lot of research that shows that, acquiring a specific thing that you think will make you happy probably won't. But um, in our own profound personal happiness is a lot of our power to be kinder, better people. And as Gretchen Rubin says, the research shows happier people are healthier, better spouses, better bosses, better employees, more likely to volunteer, more likely to vote, less likely to commit a crime, more likely to
Hmm.
be a useful member of society, to donate in every way. So I think that it's our responsibilities, all of our responsibilities, along with the other responsibilities we have in life, to take care of our own selves and our own happiness. And if you're putting that aside, if you're saying, well, right now I need to focus on making more money, being a better provider, making sure my kid gets into college, all that stuff, yes, absolutely, do all that stuff. But your happiness is an important element of everything else that you want to try and do. So don't leave that aside.
Yeah, I agree. It has that trickle down effect. Absolutely. It permeates into every aspect of your life. So it's certainly a beautiful mission to have. All right. So I'd love to talk about intention and goal setting, because I think that's something that can be helpful in leading us forward, having that vision.
Yes, and making us happy. I mean, I think most of us are happier when we have goals of some sort. I mean, the
Hmm.
goal could be, to retire next year. The goal could be to go on a wonderful trip. It doesn't have to be a career goal. My personal goals tend to be career goals, but it's whatever goal you have. I think we as humans need goals.
Hmm.
Um, so goal setting is something that I love to talk about, and I have a whole elaborate system for it, which we won't have time to really talk about. But it begins, I think, the very first step of that is to really understand and envision what you want, where you want to be. Um, and when I do the workshop, actually ask people to take 5 minutes to sit down and write down, imagining themselves 5 years from now, where they're living, who they're living with, what
Hmm.
their job is when they go to work in the morning, how they spend their day, all that stuff. Because the more precise, the better an idea you have of where you want to be, the better you can figure out how to actually get there. Oh, I want to be a millionaire someday. Okay. But, I see myself living in this house, doing this job that pays that much, that gets me to being a millionaire. Much, much more useful. So, there's a story I told in the book that I know you liked, which is my husband, who's a guitar player. I think one of my bio says there's a lot of guitars in my house. I'm not the
Hmm.
guitarist; he is. Um, he's a guitar player and a guitar teacher. And
Awesome.
years ago, in a little town called Sauga, New York, he had a guitar student named Jimmy, who was at the time 13. And Jimmy had like a very definite view of where he wanted to get in life. And where he wanted to wind up in life was Saturday Night Live. He was determined at 13 he was going to be on Saturday Night Live someday. He was very clear on that. And
Hmm.
every time they had a guitar lesson, before Jimmy would start the guitar lesson, he had to tell Bill a joke, and Bill had to tell him a joke. That was the rule.
Hmm.
And he was very determined. And the power of precise vision is really clear because, as you may have guessed, Jimmy's last name is Fallon, and he did indeed become a star on Saturday Night Live,
Yay,
and then
Jimmy.
and then he went on to the Tonight Show, and so. Um, but he had such a clear vision that I mean, it's a great story. He went to audition for Saturday Night Live. The first time he did it, it didn't work, but he didn't give up on his vision. He, I think, dropped out of college and went, I may have this detail wrong, so I apologize if I do, but he left and went to California so that he could study with an improv troupe. Then he got offered a pilot in a TV show. He actually put a clause into the contract that said, by the way, I can leave at any time if I get offered a slot on Saturday Night Live. And the
Wow.
producers apparently only signed this contract because they were like, yeah, sure, all right, kid, you're going to Saturday Night Live. Okay, yeah, yeah, all right, we're not going to worry about that. Well,
Wow. I love it. Yeah.
the second time he
Mhm.
auditioned for Saturday Night Live, he was told that Lorne Michaels never laughs, but Lorne Michaels laughed. And Tina Fey, who was there at the time, afterwards said in an interview that she had only seen two people, and one of them was Jimmy Fallon, who were so in tune with the show that they would have been able to go on as a live cast member that same night. And she said it was like he was grown in a lab to succeed on Saturday Night Live. That's what
Mhm.
intention can do for you if you have a very precise, specific idea of where you want to wind up.
Yeah, it's such a great story, and I love the fact that he was persistent no matter what, and no matter what others said, because I can imagine people would say, "Oh, how ridiculous! You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's never going to happen." You know, even the producers thought, "Oh, sure, I'll sign this contract, put it in the clause, or put that clause in there because it's probably not going to happen, right?" So
Right.
I think it's important to know that your goal is for you. Others don't have to agree with it, right? So you know, set that intention. You know, stay true to what it is that you desire. Have definiteness of purpose, and stay at it. You know, because we all have our own view of what success looks like to us, what our dreams look like, and I think it's important to do what you can to foster that. To at least give it a try. Start small. Use the baby steps,
Right.
as
Use
Minda
baby
says.
steps and go towards your goals. And I don't, I never want to say, and I don't mean to say, as so many people do, well, if you believe in something hard enough and you envision it hard enough and you really give it your all, you will get there. Because, you never know. I mean, you never know. People have all kinds of dreams. Sometimes they work,
Hmm.
sometimes they don't. But it is always worth giving it your all if it's something that you care about.
Yeah, I
Because
believe.
it's the only way you'll find out if you can do it or not.
Yeah, and I think it's important just to take action because, even if that is not going to lead you to that end result that you anticipated, along the way, you're going to find something else that might make even more sense to you, right? So it's in
Absolutely.
taking that action that we can figure it all out. And unfortunately, we are out of time. Minda, this hour flew by so quickly with you. So I'd love to give you an opportunity to let the viewers and the listeners know how to find you and get more information
Um,
on your book.
so the book is on Amazon and wherever books are sold. You can also find out a whole lot more about me at my website, which is mindazetlin.com. And that's a great place to link for my column. The Laid Back Leader is on inc.com. That's where you can find that. But you can also, at my website, to sign up and get my newsletter. I send out daily texts to people that a lot of people really like with challenges and suggestions in them. So you can sign up for that. So you can really get inside my brain at mindazetlin.com.
Awesome. I love it. Well, we've been so happy to pick your brain, in this hour, helping us with our career. And certainly I encourage everyone to have a look at Minda's website. So mindazetlin.com. That Zetlin is Zetlin. And of course, her book is called Career Self-Care. So that is a wrap. So I'm going to say thank you to Minda. All right, everyone. So make sure you continue to work on your mindset. Remember that your mindset is like a muscle that needs to be strengthened and conditioned, and really, cultivate that life that you love. Use the tools and techniques that you're learning here on the Mindset Mentor, and certainly start questioning and be curious about how you can foster more self care into your day.